Welcome back to the Adonai Gameplay Animation Workshop. This is class overview 8. Today we looked at creating two-dimensional blend spaces, how we can implement them along with the coding part behind it. So the first thing I did today was put back our old character as our main character in our level blueprint. If I open the level blueprint, you can see it's the old one. And then our main agenda for today is to attach a two-dimensional blueprint on it instead of one-dimensional blueprint. So firstly, we are going to create two-dimensional blueprints, and the way you do that is you go animation and then you go blend space. Instead of blend space 1D, you click blend space. Once you click blend space, it's going to ask you for the proper skeleton, so make sure you select the right one that is aligned to your needs. And I'm going to show you the difference between a two-dimensional and a one-dimensional blend space now. So that is, where's our jog? Okay, so first things first. This was our previously used one-dimensional blend space. As you can see, it's dependent on speed. It goes from 0 to 1200, but you can only put so many animations on it. Whereas if you look at the jog, then you can see it has multiple directions attached to it. This is left side, this is the right side, forward all the way, and then backwards. So the way we do this is whenever you create a two-dimensional bed space, you're going to have two separate axes. So instead of just having a horizontal axis, you're going to have a horizontal and vertical axis. So you can set the minimum and maximum axis values along with the number of divisions and the number of grid divisions for each of them, and then place animations according to it. So this is where you will be placing your 8-way animation. So forward, backward, left, right, forward right, backward left, and backward right and backward left. Okay, so that's how you create a two-dimensional blend space. Now it's the time to understand where you put it. So since that was our idle slash jog walk animation, we would put it simply here, wherever we had the old blend space, but instead here. And since we had two different axes, whatever you label the axis as is also going to be the name of these things. So there's ABP speed, which was already created from before, and then there's ABP direction. And the way we're getting direction is by using this line of code. So earlier we were using get velocity of the character and then getting a vector length and putting it into speed. But this time we've created a brand new variable called animation blueprint direction. And then we're getting the actor's rotation. We're getting the right vector out of it and then the vector length and then plugging that into the direction. So now you're able to have both direction and speed attached from the playable character itself. Okay. The next thing we learned was about switching between crouching aiming and crouching not aiming, because we had two-dimensional blend spaces for those two. We created those as well today. The way you create those is the same as the way you created the walk one, uh, with direction and speed as your horizontal and vertical axes, and then making sure you put the right animations everywhere. And the only difference between the two-dimensional blend space for hips fire and iron sight is that one of them, the character is aiming and the other one is not. So we decided to come up with a transition rule that is going to allow us to swap between these two animations. So the first thing for that we needed was to have a button set for aiming. So we made this piece of code here, which is right mouse button. If you press it, then our character is aiming. That's the variable we created. And if you release it, then the character is no longer aiming. You can do that by just right clicking on the content browser, looking for a mouse input, and then selecting right mouse button. And then here you can create a variable, drag and drop it, and then select as set. Okay. Now going back to the event graph, just the way we got ABP is prone, ABP is crouching, we created a new variable, ABP is aiming, which is animation blueprint is aiming. And here we're going to pass the reference from the character blueprint, and we're going to drag out a node and search for is aiming. This is the reference to this variable. And then we plug that in together. So now we have code for both looking left and right, as well as if our character is aiming or not. So then we go into the base movement. Um, so first of all, we're gonna look at how we can transition between these two. So we only have one transition rule. Since both of them were crouching, like already the crouch position must have been turned on. The only way to swap between those two is if animation blueprint is aiming is turned on, so the value should be true. Otherwise, if it's false, then it's going to go back to crouching, not aiming. Crouch, not aiming. Okay, so how do we go from idle to crouch? Or how do we go from idle to crouch with aiming? So for that, we have new transition rules where we are using the new AND operator. So earlier we learned about not Boolean, but today we learned about and then there's also OR. So what AND operator does is as long as every single one of these pins has a value of true, only then it's going to return this value as true. So for instance here, if ABP is aiming and ABP is crouching is true, only then is it going to return the true value. I have a diagram made for this if you want to re-reference it. Basically, if there are two inputs that the AND code block can take, either true and false, or either true and true, or false and true, and then false and false. So in all cases other than case 4, where A and B both are true, the answer is always going to be 0. Okay, let's get back here. Okay, so if we go back to base movement, we can see this idle walk is when both the animation is aiming and is crouching, and then the way to go back from it is like if it's not doing that. And on the other side, we also had to update our code. So animation blueprint is crouching, but it's not aiming. So animation blueprint is crouching and animation blueprint is aiming is not true. So that's when it enters the state, and then this is just everything should be false. Basically, it's not aiming nor is it crouching, so it's just going to go back to idle. So now let's go ahead and see what we've done today. So you can see the new blend space is working fine, where our idle animation is the previous one, and then we can walk, and then if we sprint, then it will start jogging with the sprint movement. And then if you, I had the print screen set up, so if I right click, then it says character is aiming. So if I crouch now, then it's going to be on iron side. If I let go of the aim button, then it's going to stop aiming. And then you are able to transition between any of those animations. So yeah, that's about it. The main concept that we needed to get out of this was to understand how we are putting in blend spaces inside state machines with the animation speed and animation direction. Because this is where, once you guys are starting to make your own characters, you're going to be putting in your own blend space with your own 8-way animations. This is where you're going to be putting these. And that's going to be all for today.